You guys have been asking for it, so I'm not going to put it off any longer. Today, I'm going to show off the equipment I use, as well as tell you the stories behind certain pieces and why I use them. I'll break this down into different sections, which I'll link to in the description. First, let's look at guitars. I don't have a ton of info on this classical guitar. It says F. Hashimoto on the inside, and I believe my dad bought it some 50 years ago. Growing up, it was always around the house, and my dad would often play me and my siblings songs on it using the couple chords he knew. I remember from a young age, it would always catch my eye. There was a bit of a mysterious intrigue to it, drawing me in before I knew a thing about music. Next up is this 1976 Ibanez Les Paul reissue. This was my third electric guitar, though technically it's not really mine. I started off on some terrible Strat ripoff I borrowed from my neighbor before I eventually upgraded to a Blue Squire Strat. My friend Jeff had also started playing guitar around the same time as me. He went to visit some family one spring break and came back with two guitars, an authentic Gibson Les Paul as well as this knockoff. He lent me this one. That was some 15 years ago. I don't think he's gonna ask for it back. We'll see, fingers crossed. Next up, my Garrison G10 acoustic. My parents noticed that I was getting really into the guitar thing and bought me this as a Christmas gift when I was 15 or so. I should note, I'm incredibly fortunate to have the family that I do. They've encouraged me and supported me every step of the way, long after most would say, go get a real job, you schlub. I did nothing to deserve them, and I owe everything to them. Anyways, this is an especially cool Canadian-made guitar because instead of wooden bracing on the inside, it has some sort of synthetic material. I don't know exactly why, but it sounds great. Next up on the list, my 1952 American Telecaster reissue. You guys will recognize this one. It's been my number one since the day I bought it when I was 17. I was browsing one of those Fender catalogs and this guitar instantly caught my eye. I loved the way it looked. I loved the wood grain, the color. I also was really into the fact that no one I knew owned a Tele. The more I researched it, the more I was drawn into it, especially after finding out that Keith Richards and Bruce Springsteen would often use one. So I saved up all my money from reffing hockey for over a year and finally bought it. I had to special order it at my local music store and I remember being absolutely ecstatic when it came in. I got to the store as fast as I could and the first thing I played on it was the intro to Johnny Be Good. It's been the love of my life and my number one since that day. I've done some modifications to it over the years. The pickups are Texas Specials. I've had it refretted with jumbo frets as well as having some of the lacquer removed from the neck, and the pickup selector switch is a 4-way instead of a 3-way. On top of that, I got my initials right here because that's what Stevie Ray Vaughan had on his guitar. Next up is my 1988 American Frankenstrat. Somebody modded the living hell out of this one. The EMG pickups as well as the pick guard and Floyd Rose are definitely not stock, nor would they ever be my first choice. However, this was the second best deal I've ever found on a piece of gear, so I bought it. I ended up working at a music store for 2 different periods in my life. I was in the back one day rummaging around for whatever reason and I found this guy hidden away. I went to the manager, asked what the deal was with it. He said it was inventory, put a $350 price tag on it, put it on the floor. To which I quickly said, how about I'll just buy it. Now let me tell you about the best deal I ever found. I was working at the same music store when one day a fellow came in with a blue Marshall head and cabinet. I believe it was the 30th anniversary model or something like that. He said he desperately needed exactly $365 and wanted to sell his gear. I checked the serial number to make sure it wasn't stolen and realized that he'd actually bought it from us a few years back, so no big deal there. The cabinet was working fine, though it was a little bit beat up, and the most we could offer him was $350 so we could still make a little bit of profit on the resale. The head, on the other hand, wasn't working at all and we had a store policy that we wouldn't buy broken gear. The guy was adamant that he needed $365. I don't know why, maybe he had some bad debts. Not my place to get involved. I told him that the store couldn't buy the head, however, I was personally willing to get $15 out of my pocket and buy it off of him. Which, looking back, employees buying broken gear off of customers may have been against store policy, but what are they gonna do now? He was thrilled with the deal, as was I. We both walked away happy. I took the broken head home to my handy father. He fixed one little thing. I think it cost 75 cents and the amp was singing. I ended up selling the amp for $1,000 or so, which I used to buy a laptop. That laptop is now broken, so I guess everything has come around full circle. All right, next up we've got my little Art and Lutherie parlor guitar. After high school, I did some business courses at university. I quickly found out it wasn't for me and decided to take some time time off. I needed to figure out my life, and what better way to do that than go on a backpacking excursion of Australia. Of course, I couldn't take off for half a year without a guitar, so I bought this thing, which I thought would be great to travel with. Everywhere I went on my trip, I would buy a patch sewed onto the bag as a bit of a souvenir. I would use this guitar in the following years when I would spend my summers in Winnipeg playing music for patients at hospitals. The bag with all those patches was a great talking point and would bring back happy and sunny memories. Which brings me to the most beautiful guitar in the entire world, the Gibson Reverse Flying V. After returning home from Australia, I went back to work at that same music store. We got to know that Gibson was doing this Guitar of the Week promo where they would do a limited run of 400 guitars worldwide of a different guitar every week. I was browsing through the catalog and this bad boy caught my eye instantly. I've since come to realize that 4 out of 5 people think this guitar is absolutely hideous, while the other 20% believe it to be the most beautiful thing they've ever laid eyes on. I had to fend off a couple other employees who wanted it, but I ended up being the one who walked away with this fair maiden. Next up, the Hofner JS Stowell Very Thin. It's crazy for me to think, but this is actually the last guitar I've bought, especially since I got it some 7 years ago. Have you ever heard of the guy who traded a paperclip or something for a house? Some guy started with a paperclip and slowly traded up to things with incrementally higher value until he eventually got a house. Well, that's kind of what happened with this guitar. I had bought a Marshall JCM 800 from the 80s for something like 200 bucks. I sold it, made a profit, and used the cash to buy myself a Marshall Jubilee combo. I sold that and used the profit to buy a Marshall Jubilee head and cab. That amp may have been the one that got away. It was absolutely amazing, and a large part of me wishes I still had it. But I sold it and used the profits to buy this guitar. It's a total jazz box, which suited me just fine when I was doing my degree in music. During that period, we were working on a lot of jazz, and this was my go-to axe. And that brings me to the rest of the bunch. I've got a Lincoln pedal steel guitar, which you see now and then. Unfortunately, it did not fit in the family photograph. Not much of an interesting story there. I'd wanted one for years and I saw it for a good price. The rest of the guitars you see me playing all belong to friends who've lent them to me for one reason or another. This bass belongs to my friend Tom, who moved away and wanted to leave it in good hands. Similar story to the white Strat, that's my friend Paul's. The Gretsch belongs to my friend Will, who's helped me out with a number of videos and was also a bandmate years and years ago and also a very close musical confidant. Which brings us to the amps. My main gigging amp, which I actually don't have here, it's over at my parents' place, is a Fender Twin Reverb 1965 reissue with a single 15-inch speaker in it. Stevie Ray Vaughan played an amp with a 15-inch speaker in it. I tried it out, liked it, and that's pretty much it. These other two amps here are a little bit more interesting. As I've said, my dad is a pretty impressive fellow. Growing up, he could often be found in our basement restoring old pinball machines. Another one of his hobbies, as I got more into playing guitar, was building guitar amplifiers. So these two amps are built by him. This one here is a single 12-inch speaker, 2 channels, and it sounds as good as it looks. I don't use it so much for videos, but it's the one that sits in my living room that I'll use to plunk around on whenever I feel so inclined. This tweed one over here is my main recording amp. It's modeled after a Dr. Z Stangray with a couple twists and turns. I absolutely love the way it sounds, and any electric guitar you've heard me play has probably come through here. Alright, so finally, let's look at effects. My pedals are all laid out on a pedal train board, and they're powered by a Voodoo Labs power supply. I've tried to buy quality over quantity throughout the years, and once it gets on my pedal board, it essentially stays there forever. So starting off the chain is my custom audio wah, which then goes into the Mojo Vibe. This thing is designed to emulate a Hendrixy type sound, think Machine Gun. It's supposed to sound like one of those rotating Leslie speakers. That goes into a basic Boss tuner, which then goes into my Cusack Screamer. This is what I use for the majority of my crunch, whether it be subtle or fairly obvious. It sounds like a tube screamer, but better. For my heavier distortions, I use the Wampler Plextortion, which then goes into my Diamond compressor, into the Demeter Tremulator, which then goes into a basic Boss chorus. I rarely, if ever, use chorus, but like I said, once it gets on the pedal board, it doesn't really leave. This goes into the Exotic EP Booster, which when kicked in, gives me a little bit of a decibel boost for a solo or something. And rounding it out is my Gaiatone Tube Echo. On top of that, I've got a couple pedals that aren't on the board. If you ever have heard me using that talking guitar effect, that would be done using the Vocoder V01. I've also got an Electro Harmonics micro synth for those weird and funky guitar tones. And guys, there you have it, all my worldly possessions. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't come rob me now. Thank you all so much for watching. A massive shout out to everyone who supports me through Patreon. You guys make this content possible and I'm forever grateful. I'm Samurai Guitarist and I will see you again soon.